Hello, how y'all doing? Tracy's Kitchen and Appalachian Adventures. Now I'm going to talk about in this video the red states. These are states that you shouldn't move into or that you need to leave if you are poor. Now I consider poor if you're making under 50K and if you have children you need to subtract about $3,000 per child. So if you have 3 children and a spouse, that's 4 people. So you may as well subtract 4 times $3,000. That's $12,000. So your really net income to live in is 38K. 30, and you can't live like that in California. You can't. You can eat because they got the Union Mission and everything, but you really can't live in California on 38K. Okay, you're gonna end up living like a poor person, which you are poor. Okay, so these are some of the red states: California, Nevada, New Mexico, Arkansas of all places. Okay, now let's look at the Midwest. Texas, Atlanta, Georgia. You probably cannot afford Atlanta, Georgia, and Kansas. Now, also New York and Massachusetts. California has no houses. They're not going to build it anytime soon. New York absolutely has no house, and we all know that. People living in tunnels and on the street and everything. Children, we all know that. Massachusetts is too expensive for you. About probably Oregon and Washington State, they don't have any housing for poor people, but they do have a lot of rural areas. You might be able to get some abandoned property or abandoned shack somewhere, or an abandoned lot in Bigfoot country, no doubt, that you can buy for like $1,500. You might, but you have to do your research. North Dakota and South Dakota, if you have 60K or 40K, you may be able to buy a nice home. You got to think about it. If you have children, you got to have a yard. So if you have about 40K, you may be able to find something in North Dakota or South Dakota. Pay cash for it. Do not get a mortgage. Okay, do not get a mortgage. Pay cash for it. Okay. New Hampshire and Vermont, if you have 60K saved up, you may be able to buy a rustic cabin up there that can withstand that Canadian winters. Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, you may be able to buy a house or a shack for less than $500. I'm sure you can. On the outskirts of Chicago, you may be able to find something. St. Louis, Missouri, they have a lot of properties under 10K, foreclosed properties, abandoned properties that nobody wants. So you can, that's a good place for poor people to go. But again, the red states are California, Nevada, New Mexico, Arkansas, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Kansas, okay, New York, Massachusetts. I didn't mention Pennsylvania because actually Pennsylvania has a lot of rural area that's reasonably priced, and if you really do your research, you can find a foreclosed property or just abandoned properties that nobody want. Now, with these abandoned properties, you just got to put in elbow grease, okay. But they are out there. I know West Virginia is a dirt cheap state. But the Bible says that Jesus said, the poor you always have with you. And the Lord said that also in Deuteronomy. He said, the poor shall not cease out of the land. So we always going to have poor people. Even in the richest state, you're going to have tent cities. You're going to have people that just can't make it in this world. The Bible says even in the best economies, you're going to have poor people. So what poor people need to do is find an economy that fits them. New York does not fit you if you're poor. California does not fit you if you're poor. I don't care how beautiful the state is. If you're dirt poor, if you ain't got no serious money, you can't live in California. Nevada, New Mexico. Now the reason why a lot of refugees and illegals live in California, because the government pays, there's no Section 8, because Section 8 is when the government pays 80% of your rent. And then I think the illegals and the refugees, they have Section 8 100%, in which the government pays 100% of their rent. So they get the welfare payment. The government pays, if the rent is $1,500 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, the government pays the whole $1,500. Okay, but if you're in America, you're not going to get that. That's only for illegals and refugees. So who's on Skid Row really, particularly in LA, is poor blacks and poor whites. And maybe a sprinkling of other races, but it's basically poor blacks and poor whites. That's basically who's on Skid Row, because they don't have this 100, whatever this government program, 100%. The government pays 100% of the income. I mean, of the rent. Blacks don't have it. Whites don't have it. You have to be a non-American citizen to get that. You cannot be an American citizen. American citizens are only eligible for Section 8, where the government pays 80% of the rent. If you're if you're an illegal or a refugee, the government pays 100% of your rent. Okay. So these are some of the poor states. Okay, West Virginia is poor, even though West Virginia has tent cities of all places. And I know you can get some property in West Virginia for $700. I know that. Good property too. Okay, I know that. Okay, Virginia, you can get some decent properties if you look for $1,500. You gotta look. You know, it's in the rural counties. You just gotta do your research. You gotta go county by county and look at these properties. Okay, because actually you can be poor anywhere. It doesn't matter where you're poor. You just poor. For example, I read this article about this man who was getting a disability payment in Washington, D.C. He was getting over $900 a month. Now, he could live very well in West Virginia or Virginia with that disability check, but he lives like an animal like that in Washington, D.C. He's staying in some little cubby hole that doesn't have running water. He has to go upstairs to get the water or something, and he's just living in a little rat hole. It's just a little cubby hole. And if he just get out of D.C., he could take his $900 check and live pretty decently in either Virginia, West Virginia, or the Carolinas. Okay, he don't have to live like an animal. But, you know, he won't leave. We got to learn to leave, y'all. I mean, if it's not working in California, you got to leave. Okay, and a lot of people on Skid Row are waiting. The reason why they sitting on Skid Row and doing nothing day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, is because they're waiting on California to give them some housing. California always said they're not going to give any housing. They don't have any. They're not going to build any anytime soon. So they're really waiting on nothing. They're waiting on a fantasy. You got to get real. You know what? If you're poor, you got to get real. You got to get out of your fantasy world. Because California's not going to do nothing for poor people anytime soon. California caters to the rich and famous. They don't cater to no poor people. Okay? You got to think when you're poor. You know, rich people don't have to think, and they don't think. They got other people to manage their money because they don't know how to think. They don't know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Okay, so rich people don't even think. But when you're poor, you better cotton pick and learn how to think. If it's not working for you in California or in Nevada, you dirt poor, you just lost your job, you better go to a cheap state where you can at least stretch your money and not get a mortgage. Okay, you better get out of California's poverty system. California's economic system right now is just welfare. Okay, government pays for the rent, government pays for the food, government gives them a check. Welfare. That's the only industry California has right now. It's welfare. Okay, ditto for Nevada, New Mexico, and Kansas and Arkansas. Okay, ditto. New York is even worse. Okay. So you have to be realistic when you poor. You have to be honest. Okay. How much will? I mean, why in the world would you, if you making $7.25 an hour, you're not gonna find anywhere to live in Washington D.C. And you know what? For that matter, Washington D.C. is a red, well, it's not a state. Washington, D.C. is a red area. Okay, I'm going to add that right now. Washington, D.C. If you poor, don't go there. They got all kinds of tent cities in Washington, D.C., outside of Washington, D.C. You can't even live there like a human being in D.C. if you're making below a certain amount of money. You just can't. You can't even live like you're a human being. So if you poor, do not move in D.C. I don't understand. D.C. gives some people a one-way trip to Greensboro, North Carolina, you know, which is a cheaper state. And what do? Come back to D.C. Come back to what? Come back to rats, roaches, huge bed bugs about this big, and they come back. Okay, when they better, you know, when they're whatever money they're getting will last them a lot longer in the Carolinas. Okay, Carolinas, like I said, the Carolinas a good place to go. You can buy cheap property in the Carolinas, but like I said, you got to do your research. You cannot be lazy when you're poor. You got to be always up thinking. You got no time to just sit in the tent city and do nothing every day. You got to be thinking. You got to have a game plan. Write on a piece of paper. Okay? But those are the red states. If you're poor, avoid all red states. Have a nice day.